I want to hit harder. My elbow's dropping. My contact is off. We've all been there. And yeah, the arm swing is very complex. So luckily, we have the owner of the Arm Swing Academy, Nick Del Bianco, is here to break it all down for us. You'll be leaving here with elite knowledge, drills that you can do, cues that you can implement right away so you can fix all those problems that we kind of mentioned above. So let's level up our arm swing today on Volley IQ. Let's get into it. So, Nick, arm swing is one of the biggest things in the sport, right? So, I grew up playing, baseball, football, all these sports kind of came naturally to me. But what are the struggles? What are the myths kind of people are dealing with out there? And how do you approach this very complex thing like the arm swing?
Yeah, very cool. So for me and our company, we see the arm swing like this very complex physical dynamic skill. We essentially want to be jumping as high as basketball players while throwing or hitting the ball as hard as a baseball pitcher. So we want to do these really cool dynamic things as we're flying through the air, and it can be tough and really complicated. So what we've done is we try to simplify things into kind of three buckets or three kind of concepts that we believe, like, if you do these three things, you're working towards a more efficient arm swing, and more efficient arm swings will equal eventually more velocity and less pain.
Yep.
So we look at how do you rotate, where do you draw back to, and how loose and whippy can you make your arm.
Okay.
And within those three things, that's kind of where we find some simplicity and some ability to actually like train the arm swing in a, whether you're like 12 or you're a pro at 28.
That's awesome. What is your take on kind of getting back? Like, what are kids looking at? What are they aware of? I think when players go and say like, "Hey, I'm throwing," it's like, what are some key takeaways that within the rotate, the loose, the drawback? What are some key ingredients to that equation?
Yeah. So within just the concept of rotation, that's kind of the main one that, like, when we talk with athletes or coaches, like, everyone gets rotation. Everyone knows that they should be hitting the ball with rotational patterns, or throwing a ball with that. So the two things, or like one thing that is usually missing, a lot of athletes are good opening up to throw, let's say. But then as they go to throw, they stop their body and they just end up facing where their target is. If you ever watch a baseball pitcher throw a ball, or if they're throwing it from the outfield all the way to home plate, an outfielder, they'll open up the same way. But then when they throw, they just let their body and their arm continue through rotation. So they don't slow anything down. And that's kind of one of the biggest things when athletes in volleyball are learning to throw or just like working on their arm swing is this is part of, like, this is like the first half of rotation. And then as we go, let your body continue to rotate through. So your hitting side ends up slightly in front of your non-hitting side. Now, this is like just arm swing stuff. This isn't, there's shots where we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
We're right-handed left side. We're hitting down the line. We're open up. We might go like that.
Yeah.
Great. Like, there's other ways of scoring the ball, but if you're looking for velocity or less pain, then this concept of just letting your body rotate through the ball can be really important, like really low hanging fruit.
And I have to go with like, there's a lot of great coaches out there. There's a lot of inexperienced coaches out there. And so I feel like whenever I'm coaching, we're coaching through all of the noise, right? Like, hey,
Mhm.
my club coach said this, my high school coach said this, or just for me, like when I teach passing, it's like freeze the platform. It's like, all right, let's just be a little bit more aware of the pieces and then you go solve, right? And so
Yes.
I'm not going to knock the coaches, but I am like, there's a lot of coaches that just haven't gotten the experience and like this isn't their full-time job. So,
Mhm.
what are some of the things that the players and maybe the coaches watching this, what can they kind of forget about? What can they kind of latch on to
Mhm.
so that it's just a clear thing of like the baseball, like just watch a baseball player throw. They're not doing all of this like random, like wrist snap kind of stuff. They're like very specific moves. but like what's cutting through the noise the most when you're in these clinics or these lessons or with these college programs?
Yeah. So there's a couple of common things that we'll kind of pose a question to athletes and to coaches, like what do you already know about the arm swing? What are you working on? And two really common ones are we want to lead with the elbow. So we want the athletes or the coaches say that they want the elbow to come through and then the hand to follow, which yeah, 100%. Now really common is to what we like. There's a lot of drills online, and I'm sure everyone's seen them on social media before, where like they end up in this kind of position and then going like that and throwing a ball or hitting a ball from there. And
Oh,
like
I
it's
just saw
breaking
that one
down.
the other day. I
Yeah,
just saw
yeah.
that one and it's like
Yeah,
and you're like, "Oh man." Okay.
yeah. And like I get where it's coming from. It's coming from a really good place. Like it's coming from the idea of leading with your elbow. Now how that happens is through the ability to externally rotate at your shoulder, which will allow the elbow to come through and the hand to leg. Um, and we can create that whip effect in that way. Now it's different than just doing like a tricep extension. It's your it's your shoulder and the looseness in your arm and the looseness in your shoulder, allowing it to get into external rotation, allowing you to whip through and have that elbow lead. So that's one concept there that, or like one myth of like, it's not really a myth because we do want to lead with want the elbow to come forward first, but how we get there and how we train that is not through necessarily cueing the elbow, but through cueing what the shoulder's doing, what the hand's doing.
I love that because I didn't know that specifically, but I knew what it looked like, and I think that's a
Yeah.
really cool takeaway. So if you have some players that you're coaching, right, and you're trying to get them to this next level of awareness, what are you trying to cue and to help them so that it's a little bit faster in the process? Because this is really complex. So like, how do you
Mhm.
cut through the noise if someone's struggling or if they have a really wonky swing, or I just saw you working with a high level D1 player, like they have so much noise. What kind of things have worked for you?
Yeah, great question. So I think with all athletes in volleyball, we start pretty simple, or we try and find out where they're at. But like for most of them, we need to just emphasize that takeoff position and their landing position. If we can get their feet taking off a certain way and then landing facing slightly the other direction, we've accomplished rotation. Now, maybe we haven't accomplished the looseness or the low drawback or the hip shoulder separation within that. That's fine. We want to start. It's a really easy learning place of like you take off facing this wall, you land facing this wall. And
Cool.
if we can do that, we are accomplishing rotation and we are moving the needle pretty far as a starting point. And then from there, we love to identify where that hand is going. A lot of people, another one of those myths or the things that we hear a lot of is like snap the wrist. Okay. So when we think of snapping the wrist, and like, yeah, the wrist will snap on top of the ball as we're loose and as we contact on top of it. So
Yep.
those things will happen. What we can train to allow that to happen and allow it to happen with high velocity is just where we're following through to. So when we're loose and we're following through, we like to say like smack yourself in the back, or give yourself a little slap in the back or the hip or whatever, so that you are training this full big rotational pattern and letting the arm follow through and letting your body decelerate versus a lot of people when they snap the wrist will end up stopping their hand kind of like midair. And that's a lot of stress and force going through the shoulder and not dispersing through the rest of the body. So when we think of like the top spin of the ball, when we think of the health of the shoulder, when we think of velocity, we can first take off one way, land the other way, and then second, just get them following through to this other side. And again, like I said before, like there's gonna be shots where you don't do that. We're okay if you follow through here too for a shot specific kind of situation. But when we're trying to produce that velocity, a lot of the time for most athletes, we want them experiencing what that follow through across the body will feel like, which will help with the snap, which will help with the looseness of the arm. It will actually probably help your hand leg behind your elbow as well.
I love that because we see one, girl, boy in college pro, we see them do it. And then, the coach takes it and then says, "Hey, this is how we swing." There's a bunch of, women running a slide and they're doing the snap. and then people fail to like realize that, they're strong. They've done it a million times. They've built the proper like backup for it. So I
Mm.
love this that it's like, yes, these specific things are part of the game, but hey, let's build like a solid core so that we can then branch out. My
Yeah.
question to you is kind of why are people so bad at this? Or like, why is this?
Yeah. Why do we have a
Why do we
company?
actually need you? No, like what's the kicker here? Because like
Yeah.
I just grew up doing it. It's so natural for me because I was just the sports kid. Um, but you would think that people adapt, right? And just like, oh, you see it, then you do it. But there's so many like high level 18-year-olds out there, and you're like, man, you've been playing for 8 years and you still haven't adapted. Like, what's the kicker for you?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great question. We ponder that question often as a company because like it's because of that that we have a company that works on the arm swing and we can travel around and do that. So there's a couple things. So first one I would say is just the environment that we're in at a young age on the volleyball court, which is very commonly the net is way higher than us. So
Okay.
a simple pattern or like at that age, our criteria for success is ball over the net. So if we need to get the ball over the net and we're like, yeah, that checks the boxes, then a very simple pattern for that is this. It's arm, it's a high drawback. There's not much going on in the body. Um, there's not really, yeah, there's not that throwing kind of motion look to it because our criteria for success is over the net. The net is too high for us, so we have to be simple with our movements. So that's one area that's like if we could lower the nets and like we've seen other countries doing this, like there's some countries in Asia and Europe
For
and I think
sure.
South America too that like they play less players on the court at a young age, you make the court smaller, they drop down in that way like a lot. So that like, hey, if you're thinking that you want these athletes playing when they're like 20 years old and they're probably getting like this high over the net as like somewhere, let's say somewhere around here as like a minimum, let's make sure that our 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 year olds are also be able to get that high over the net
Yep.
on an average. And then I think we could probably like have a start towards seeing more athletes self-organize in these patterns that we want to see as they develop at a younger age, simply because of the net. The other thing is, I think a lot of athletes, like when we were growing up, this is definitely a common thing of like being taught to draw back high. It's like draw back high, contact high. Middles are taught this still and common. All positions are really still taught this, depending on where they are and who they're being coached by, but to draw back high so that they contact the ball high. That's another one of those myths, like you were mentioning before, like what are some myths?
Yep.
Draw back high, contact high is a myth. You can draw back extremely low and contact the ball extremely high. Your hand will end up moving faster, which will pull your hand up higher and actually like pull that arm bone into this position where you're going to have a high contact point. Now, initially, it's not going to be there. If you use your draw back high and then you switch to here, your contact will be thrown off.
Yep.
And that's okay. That's part of the learning process. It's part of change is like you're going to see things get worse before they get better. But we see at the highest level, athletes drawing here, contacting at their peak because their brain has had the time to predict where the ball is in space and put their hand in that spot.
Yep.
But that just needs a little bit of time. So yeah, like the net height, coaching around drawing back high are kind of like two big things that are preventing it. And then from a more like cultural sport, we are specializing in volleyball at a much younger age, and we are not playing very many throwing sports because of that.
Yep.
And like I played baseball, I threw javelin, I did a bunch of sports, you did a bunch of sports, throwing sports, overhead sports, and like I don't know. I was never really coached on my arm swing. I did a little bit at Training Western with Ben Joe, but outside of that, it was like essentially like, oh yeah, your arm swing's good. Let's see if we can make it faster.
Yep.
Um, and probably had similar experience.
Yep.
And we still see like if they come from a baseball or softball background and you work on the arm swing, it develops really quickly. And they might already have a sweet arm swing because of that. But because so many athletes don't have this like fundamental movement skill of being able to throw something, then they don't know how to use their body in this rotational pattern and keeping the arm loose and whippy. So then when we try to do it in volleyball, there's timing involved. there's a jump involved. It's a way more complex skill, but we don't have the fundamental to pull from.
Yep.
So we don't have the fundamentals of being able to throw to be able to pull from that as we try to time it and jump and hit a ball over the net or against a block.
For sure. So I'm intrigued. Let's go look at some examples and kind of see what you're working on, what our viewers can look at as well.
So a really cool skill or thing that we can use to train the arm swing is hitting a jump spin serve. Now, when we say that, I'll play this at the same time here. It doesn't have to be from behind the end line, especially to start. We can learn this from in the court so that it's not as far away from the net as you don't have to hit it as hard to be able to hit the ball over the net. But we're just learning this big pattern of the arm swing as we're jumping and hitting the ball. So it really applicable for when we're attacking later, but also awesome for serving. So when we're watching this, or another thing is with this skill is now you can go and do it at the park. You can go find a net on a grass, a beach court. You can go to a rec center, play on the indoor court. You can even just go to a soccer field and like hitting it over the soccer post, whatever it is. But like now you have the power to work in your arm swing on your own and actually see some really cool changes.
That's huge.
So yeah, totally. And I think whenever we can give the athlete to have more autonomy over their development, always a big win. So with this this jump spin, we can watch a couple of things here. So first we see that takeoff position. We mentioned it before. She's taking off. Her front foot is turned a little bit towards her hitting side, which allows her as she jumps to open up. But then because she's going to be hitting the ball across the net, her hips will just start rotating forwards. So we see the hips slowly turning now towards the net as she continues to open up the upper body, creating some hip shoulder separation, what we would call this. And then from there, she hits the ball. And we were really dialed in on working on our takeoff and landing position in this session. So she's landing like fully rotated all the way through. Now, a really common thing that you'll see as you start learning this is very commonly the hand will end up on the same side of your body. So then, like I said, like the feet are step one. And then where the hand goes is kind of like that next layer, that next upgrade that we can make of it's okay that's ending up here. She's loose, she's rotating. I'm okay with this, but I want to see, can she also get all the way through? And what does that do? That should create a little bit more whippiness of the arm and some more elbow leading, like we talked about before.
Yep.
So this was kind of like the first stages of this, was just this takeoff and landing, and she does an excellent job at that.
That's awesome. So what's she working on? Like when you go into this position, like you're working on the body, then she's working on the arm. What are some other things that the viewers can kind of see our next steps maybe?
Yeah. So then we identified a few things about her. Sorry, I'm just going to fast forward this to here. There you go. So we identified a few things about her ability to open up. So she was creating some separation between her hip and shoulder, but we want to see in this session, like this is an arm swing session. Let's explore what we can do here. So we were looking at if we have this ball, I think it's gonna be in her, which hand is it? Yeah, right hand, in her hitting hand. Can she work on throwing the ball down and behind her? So that wasn't a perfect example, but it was an idea of it, like throw the ball down behind so that it's going this way, so that should pull you into more hip shoulder separation. So like that first half of the rotation that we talked about before, this can be a really effective drill at getting us there. So then see that again, we'll go a little bit slower with it. So the ball is in your hitting hand, you jump, you let go of the ball down and behind you, so that we can get into this. Maybe it's a little bit lower drawback position, but really we're looking at, can we create more hip shoulder separation? And when we do that, it's like loading a spring. So when we create that big hip shoulder separation, we have the stretch reflex in our body, which is the same thing we talk about when we say like to jump high, we use a stretch reflex.
Yep.
The plyometric reflex to hit the ball hard, we want to access that same thing. And part of it is just how we load how much hip shoulder separation we can create, and then how loose can it be as we follow through with that. So
Love
that
it.
was one way. Do you want to go, AJ?
Yeah, no, I just like, so when you're doing this is so sticky for, players, right? Because you're mentally cueing a drawback and then you still got to hit the ball. I just love how, oh, that was a good view. Um, complex it is, right? And
Yeah.
this is a very complex skill. And so for me as a coach, I'm like, oh, I love the stickiness, even though so many people watching this are gonna be like, oh, that wasn't a good rep or that wasn't, perfect. It's like,
Yeah.
that's part of it. You're trying to understand and feel
Totally.
your body, understand complex moves. And I'm like nerding out on like the coaching part and,
Yes.
and just kind of like this, this girl is probably like in it right now, but that's what it takes to kind of change your motor patterns
Yeah. And also like credit to her, like she is
for sure.
the one of the best or the best girl in her age group in the States. She'll be at Texas in 2026, I believe. Like she's an incredible athlete and she's still wanting to see some improvements and put in some work. And like she had plenty of times in the session where she looked a little silly, and that's okay.
Yeah,
Like that like silliness and like that making mistakes is part of exploring and part of being like an elite level athlete is you're okay with those mistakes and you're okay with that silliness on the road to betterment or to improvement.
that's awesome.
So just quickly, one other drill that we tested with her, which didn't work as well, was the ball in the other hand. So now we're focused on where's that left hand going as she's drawing back as another way, again, just to create a better hip shoulder separation as she opens up. So this one, sorry, she's going to try and release that green. How does she release it? No, I gave her the option not to. So she just has a weighted ball in her hand, a heavier ball, so that she knows where her left hand is in space. So just using as a bit of a kinesthetic awareness of like that
Yep.
hand is heavier. We know where it is in space. We're trying to reach it up towards the ball and not let it drift off to the left or her
Okay.
non-hitting side. So that when we reach up, it can open us up more. When we reach left, which was a common thing for her earlier,
Yep.
is it just keeps us more open. So just another drill that we like to do sometimes for the same reason. So
Mhm.
we have the ball in the right hand, the ball in the left hand, it for the same thing.
Yep.
How can we create a better opening position so that we can then just follow through and hit the ball hard?
So with all that information, I think my only question is kind of a three-part question is if I'm a 12-year-old, what do I do? And this could be volleyball, non-volleyball. Like if I'm a 16 to 18-year-old, if I'm a 24, 25-year-old, like I'm interested on what would be your three takeaways from each age group so they
Mhm.
can really understand like, hey, I'm in this phase. I'm gonna jump spin serve. I'm gonna do some drills. I need to be a little bit, pickier with what I do. Like what would let's call it 12 to 14, 16 to 18, 22 to 24.
Cool. Okay, so for that really young or like that younger age group, newer to volleyball, such a fun age to work with because they don't have thousands and thousands of reps of their arm swing yet. So they're pretty pliable and they can be molded pretty quickly. So a couple or let's go three things. So the first thing is whenever you're hitting a volleyball, you're trying to rotate. So whatever that means for you at that age, great. But you're trying to maybe if you're facing one wall, you hit the ball and you face the other way. That'd be amazing as the starting point. That will give you a really good fundamentals for when you get to that next age group and you can maybe start being a little more specific with things. At that age, 12 to 14, throw and throw in a variety of ways. Don't worry about it looking like volleyball. Okay. We see a lot of volleyball players like throwing and they're just very robotic, like be athletic, jump and throw, run and throw, pretend you're a shortstop, pretend you're an outfielder, pretend you're a quarterback, like just get athletic with throwing patterns that your brain has access to all these different ways of moving that it can then pull from as we try and apply it to the arm swing. So maybe let's just go with two for that age group. I would say like
Yep.
throw lots and often, and whenever you're hitting, try to rotate on the ground, in the air, whatever it looks like, great.
Sweet.
The 16 to 18 age group. Also, like, I mean, all these age groups are fun to work with, but this is where we start seeing a little bit more emphasis and importance on the physical side of things as one of the keys of like your body needs to do some really cool things and it needs to do it at really high speeds. So for us, what we've seen to be effective is you also need to be able to do those really cool things at like slow speed or no speed so that your tendons and your body can handle it and they can do it at a high level. So we're going to ask you to rotate a lot in your arms. And we talked about it all this whole talk. If we're asking you to rotate on the court, we're going to start training you in some of these rotational patterns at slower speeds, maybe with a little bit of load or some resistance, maybe fast, maybe slow, whatever it is, but like just giving your body the ability to go there in a bunch of different ways so that you can continue to do that and you can last as you do so. So the physical side becomes more important at this age group. And then technically, this is where usually we start seeing a little bit more emphasis on the second two keys. Now it can be a little bit different for each athlete, but like how we're loading at 16 to 18, we can start really emphasizing that, especially if they have that foundation of rotation already. Then we can look at how can we create better rotation patterns, more hip shoulder separation. How can we load up that spring even more so we can just let it go really fast? And a lot of that is through how we're drawing back. So we'll start doing having a little bit more like intention around our work with a drawback position. And for us, we say low, and low is encompassing of like we're pretty happy like anywhere in this zone here as we're drawing back. For us, at all those positions, put our shoulder in a position that we can rotate more through the spine. When we're up here, we shoulder in a position that we can't really rotate as much through the spine, so we end up finding another pattern or solution, and we end up bending backward and bending forwards. Gotcha. So physical at this age, we start like it starts being more important how we're working out, how we're moving, and then how we're loading that position. Okay. And then the last age group is what age again?
Upper end college or something, pro players, cool. Like very specific.
Yeah. This is where it gets like really fun and really specific because some of these athletes, they've never really worked on their arm swing. Like we've worked with national team players before and we worked on their arm swing and we're like, hey, what do you know? Like we asked that question, what do you know about the arm swing? What are you working on? They're still saying like Batman, Superman, Robin Hood. And it's the same stuff that like you hear when you're 8 or 9 years old. And they haven't ever revisited it. And
if you said that to me in Poland, like, hey, yeah. What do you think about it? All I know is like outcomes and like slots that I've tried to hit. I would have no clue because we didn't have like a lot of video back then. Like I didn't know where the elbow was. And if you said like, hey, this is your arm swing, I would have been like, okay, I would have no idea.
Yeah. And like, so yeah, when we played, that was common and like, it's still common. I bet. It's better. I would say it's a little bit better, but it's still quite common. So at that age, we kind of look at like, where's all ages, but like, especially there, we're fine tuning things what can we do to adjust something for you to make your next upgrade, whether that's less shoulder pain, back pain, things like that, or more velocity and more accuracy, things like that. So often we'll still start with rotation being like our foundation of like, how are you rotating? Yep. If that box is checked, great. Then where are you drawing back to? Can we create a better loading position so that we can use more of our body to hit the ball? If that box is checked, then we might more look at the looseness. And these aren't really in order, but like it'll be more of an assessment at that age group of where are they at, and then what's like the one change that will move the needle the furthest, and then go from there and see how the dominoes kind of fall from there. So at that age, like being assessed, like have your arm swing assessed, can be really important because again, you're at a level where your performance is a lot of part of your career. Like how much money you're making is kind of based off your performance at a professional level.
Yep.
So you don't necessarily want to or need to make massive changes unless you're injured. That would be kind of the area where you say, okay, if you're rehabbing from injury, we might need to make some bigger changes. But if you're just looking performance, let's make the small one. Let's figure out what that is for you. And then what we end up doing a ton of at that level is physical stuff. So your body, your tissues need to withstand really volatile, high velocity positions. And a lot of them in a week, a lot of them in a season without breaking down. Because if you get injured and if you're on the sideline, your next contract might not come.
Yeah.
So how can we train your body so that you can handle the positions that you put it in at high speeds? And then what's like the smallest thing that we can do to your arm swing to make the biggest change?
I love that. There's so much here to unpack. So I'm excited for people to kind of like take a look, understand it a little bit more. Thank you for your time and obviously
Thank
the
you.
knowledge. If you guys want to know more about Nick and the Arm Swing Academy, check them out on Instagram. They got a bunch of online resources as well. Nick was awesome enough to help out for Athletes Volleyball School as well. So if you go there, you get a free course explaining a lot of this stuff and kind of give you a blueprint to success. So we'll be following closely. I'll be learning more from you, I'm sure, in the future. But thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
All right, see ya.